Now you're going to have an opportunity to look at those units that we had you bring to class. So before we get started on unit modification, we wanted to talk about a couple of different ways that you could modify units. Now this is by no means an exhaustive list. It's just a list that Shane and I put together by having a conversation about what some of the different ways are. So there might be multiple other ways that you can think of to modify a unit. These are just some of them that you could use. The first one is to look at individual modifications for each lesson. So even though you have a whole unit, maybe you go one lesson at a time and say, what modifications can I make for this lesson? And maybe you don't make modifications for every lesson, but you pick a couple lessons and make modifications for them. This is similar to what you could do for an individual lesson, where instead of changing the whole lesson, you might identify some pieces of a lesson that you want to change. You could even go bigger and say, instead of like for an entire course, instead of modifying the whole course, you could identify individual units or individual lessons that you want to modify. So this is more of an individual, finding individual pieces to modify as opposed to more of a big picture type of a modification.
And the next idea is more of a big picture modification, looking at the overarching theme for the unit. Perhaps an energy unit might look at different pieces of what makes up energy, how energy is created, etc. Or perhaps that the students are working toward building a product, like maybe an informational poster or pamphlet that ties together all of the lessons from the unit.
And this one is related to that one, and it's take products and turn them into learning experiences. So a lot of times what we do is we teach something, and then to show or demonstrate that students know what they learned, they make a product at that point in time. And instead of doing it that way and putting the product after the learning experience, make the product part of the learning experience by identifying a product that students could do and have that be a piece of the learning as they continue learning. And sometimes they might do things within that product that are actually the learning experiences themselves. So instead of you direct instructing them about something, they use the product as a way to investigate that piece of the learning experience that they have.
Another option, another idea we came up with was to really focus on student choice, that they are able to dictate the direction of their own learning and their focus. So perhaps having them have a choice to show what they know through a video, maybe an interpretive dance, a poem, lots of choices that are certainly available, and to think more openly about how students engage with the content.
So just to let you guys know, Shane is a really big fan of interpretive dance. In fact, he has a really good one about the phases of the moon. So if you ever want to know about that, you just talk to him and let him know, and he can go through it with you. It's pretty impressive. Another one is to do a complete unit redesign. Maybe you look at a unit and it's got a lot of direct instruction to it. You're looking at it. There's a lot of PowerPoints in there that you go through, and you just do it point by point, and you're like, I need to redo this unit. And sometimes this can start with a recognition that a unit needs to be redone. Other times you can identify, like something happens and you identify a direction that a unit can go. And so the impetus for doing this is actually realizing a certain direction that you want to go. So you choose to completely redesign the unit so that it's structured in a different way than it was originally.
Something else you may consider is to add more inquiry, or at least guided inquiry, into the unit as well.
And the last one is to find connections in the community or current events that you can somehow link to what you're doing in class. Now, as we said before, these are just 7 examples of ways that you can modify units. There are many others, and there's also connections that you can make between these. You can make a complete unit redesign that adds inquiry components into it, or you can add student choice to an individual lesson that you identify that you want to make modifications to. So they're not standalone types of things, but the components of them can interact with each other as well. So what you guys need to do now is we want you to take a look at your units that you had and do some modifications. And we really have 2 options for you to do that. The first one is you can start digging in and make some specific modifications, maybe going in one specific direction that you visualize, and identify several different modifications that you want to do in that direction. The other option is similar to what we did to the lesson when we were in class, where instead of going in one specific direction, maybe you brainstorm different things that you can do, maybe going in different directions and just giving a couple of different options to start. And then after that, you could dig into the unit, or maybe you spend your entire time thinking of different options for the unit. But whatever method that you try to do is up to you. But the expectation is that you take about 40 minutes to really dig into the unit and think about ways to add STEAM components to it.